Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi. Give it up. Excellent. You have a microphone there. It's so good to have you back. It's been a bit. Just pop the button and you're ready to go. At the bottom, on the bottom. There's a switch on the bottom. It's on the bottom.
Am I on?
See, I told you.
Thanks for coming, you guys. This is really nice. Makes me feel really good. Yeah, I've had a couple of interesting things happen lately. Fun Code just came out with pops of the 4 series regulars and me, and I have been doing a lot of cameo greetings, video greetings during the pandemic. So, it's kind of a guilty pleasure almost. But while a lot of my friends were kind of suffering, I was just sitting at my desk for a year making money. And I emailed Jerry Seinfeld, and I just said, I just wanted to let you know, in case you're unaware of this, that I'm doing those cameo greetings, and I actually had the best year I've ever had in my life, during the pandemic. And I said, and it's all because of you and, your show. And he sent me back an email, and he just said, wow, man, that's such a nice email to get. And he goes, I'm glad that, and what he, in his words, not my words, he said, I'm glad that perfect performance you did on my show all those years ago is still serving you. And then he said, any work in our business is good work, so keep it up. So it's like, I think I've spent 25 years wondering if Jerry, cares that I go around being the Soup Nazi, or if he'd like it or wouldn't like it. So it took 25 years, and I finally got his blessing. And so it's like, well, that felt really, I think that was as good as the Funko Pop thing, So, it's been a crazy year for everybody, I'm sure. I can't think of many businesses where you didn't suffer. And, my dad was actually a restaurateur, and that's the reason I'm not. But of course, they, took care of that and had me play a famous restaurateur. So, it just can't get it out of the bloodline, But so many restaurants, my favorite places around where I live, I was just hoping, please don't close down. Please don't close down. So it was such a crazy year. But I wanted to just say, because you asked me this question, and I have a book that my friend Linda published with me. It's called Confessions of a Soup Nazi, an Adventure in Acting and Cooking. And it's basically just stories about 52 recipes that I put in there of my own, and stories about where they coincided with my acting career and what was going on with acting when I decided to cook this particular dish and why and all that stuff. But in it, the one chapter is my Seinfeld experience and the mulligatawny, because each chapter has an experience and a recipe. And in the Seinfeld experience, I talk about, because he asked me what soups, were in the chafing dishes. And it was funny because, first of all, I have no idea. But second of all, we didn't rehearse ever with the soup. We rehearsed once on its feet, because they didn't build the soup kitchen till the very last day, which is shoot night. And the soup kitchen, by the way, was tacked onto the back of Jerry's living room, or the side, where his computer that he never used is. The soup kitchen was right on the other side of that. And we got in there to rehearse, and all they gave me during rehearsal was one chafing dish with water in it. So, no matter what they asked for, I would scoop the water out, put it in the cup. And that night, the audience came in, and I was kind of nervous because I'd never done a show of that level. I mean, I'd done 18 years of Beg, Borrow, and Steal theater, but I've never done a show of that magnitude. So when I saw those 4 Panavision cameras and all the lighting equipment bearing down on me, I was just going oh my God, if I make one mistake, it's going to cost them more than they're paying me to do this, So I was determined not to make a mistake. I figured, come on, Larry, you're a theater actor. You could do this performance without one mistake. So the very first thing that happened, now they've got 4 or 5 chafing dishes full of different soups. And the very first thing, of course, is George orders medium crab bisque.
Crab bisque.
Yeah, and so I took it out of that same chafing dish that the water was in. And then Jerry orders a medium turkey chili, and I took it out of the same chafing dish. And all of a sudden, the director yells, Andy Ackerman yells, "Cut!" And I'm just going like, "Ooh, somebody made a mistake." What went wrong? And all of a sudden, he comes up to me, he whispers, "I can see your hands, and there's 5 different soups. So when someone orders different soups, you got to take them out of a different dish." And I went, "You mean I made the first mistake of the night?" And he goes, "Luckily I didn't make any more, but it was like bound and determined not to make a mistake, and I made like the first mistake of the night." So it was like, God. But that's the answer to your question. But I really don't know what those soups were. They never got around to telling me. So, I don't know if they matched the menu or not. So, but does anybody have any burning Seinfeldian questions or otherwise that they would like to ask?
Just raise your hand and I'll come over with the microphone.
Right there.
Yeah, so I went to New York City for the Seinfeld 30th, and did you get to hang out with Keith Hernandez and Jerry? Because I met you there, but I didn't know if you got to hang out with them when you were there.
I actually didn't. And, I know both of them. I mean, I met Keith for the first time in the finale episode when we were shooting, and we hit it off because I told him, I said, the Mets are my team because I lived in Queens in 1963 and 64, and the events that happened in Queens, you may think Queens is not a glamorous place, but in 1963 and 64, we got a World's Fair, a brand new baseball stadium, and a brand new baseball team. And they were so proud of their new team that in auditorium every day in elementary school, the whole school would come and sing songs, and we would sing 3 songs: Born Free, Blowin' in the Wind, and Meet the Mets. And so I told him, I said, I'm forever a Mets fan because I was, the Dodgers left Brooklyn the year before I was born, so,
I had one quick complaint, too. I didn't get any bread with my soup.
Well, bread, $3. No soup for you. But I guess the answer to your question is I never got around to hanging out with those 2 guys because I passed them. And then they went into a separate room. I was in the Sony Skybox, and then they went into another room so that Keith could interview Jerry. And I think the funniest thing that happened during that is Keith says to Jerry, "How does it feel to be the second most famous guy from Queens College?" And Jerry goes, "The second most famous guy?" And Keith goes, "Yeah, Paul Simon." And Jerry says something like, did he have a show that, is popular 30 years later or something? And it's like, no, he has a song that's popular 60 years later. But it was a really funny exchange. So, anyway, thanks.
Anything question else? Back here?
Question back there.
Just a couple things before I ask my question. First of all, thanks for actually just killing that role so long ago. I mean, we've all had so many laughs. Our whole family rewatches that episode. I can't tell you how many times, and we laugh every time. It's just so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Secondly, before I ask my question, I think in however many years it'll be, you'll still be as famous as Paul Simon.
I don't think I'll ever be as famous as Paul, but thank you.
So, just when did you realize that after that episode aired, that the Soup Nazi character was going to be such a big part of your life?
It's been a sort of gradual, thank goodness, ascent ever since, and I never quite get used to the moment because all of a sudden, the next year, it's like a little bigger. So like the Funko Pop thing is so weird to me that I'm the only guest character besides the 4 of them that they did in the Pops. And, I asked the lady, the rep from Funko, I said, "Why just me?" She goes, "Well, everybody loves you." And I go, "But everybody loves Putty, everybody loves Frank and Estelle, everybody loves Morty and God, what was his mom's name? Morty and, what's that? Yes. And, but, so it's really weird. I mean, I can remember during the week of rehearsal, and as I said, I didn't really get up on my feet into the soup kitchen until the last rehearsal day. So during the week, I spent most of my time sitting in the bleachers with Tom Barry, who played Elaine's building superintendent, and later on Michael Jordan's father in Space Jam, and one of the lead cops on Cold Case. But we were just sitting there watching them rehearse and just looking at each other going, wouldn't this be fun? If you could just do this every day, And I would hear a couple of people kind of discussing the script and going like, I don't think this is going to be a very good script. I mean, it's not going to be one of our better episodes. And, someone even like speculated, well, we could film it and not show it. And so these are the things I was hearing. And I'm, I think I called my manager and said something like, if I rehearse with them and film the show, but they don't show it, do they still have to pay me? And she goes, yeah. Because I was very interested in that $2,600 at that time. I had done like 18 years of beg, borrow, and steal theater and was not used to anybody paying me. Except in 1985, I did a half-hour musical melodrama at Six Flags Magic Mountain, 5 times a day, 5 days a week, for $185 a week. And so before Seinfeld, that was like my biggest paycheck, So anyway, so then we shot it, and the audience laughed in all the right places, which I thought was great. And then when I came out for the curtain call, I wasn't the last one to come out. I think Wayne Knight, because, Wayne Knight was always a guest star. He never was an actual series regular. And so when they brought out the guest stars, they brought me out, and the applause was just surprising. I mean, the level went up. And so I thought, wow, at least the audience liked me, And I knew there were a lot of industry people in the audience because I was told that Larry David didn't let any network people from NBC come to the set at all during the week, which was very rare because on every other sitcom that shoots that way, the network heads come down at the end of every rehearsal day, take notes. Then they take the producers and the writers and the director and they give them the notes, and then the next day all the funny stuff is gone. So Larry David, by season 7, had all network people banned from the set all week. So the only way they could see the show was to sit in the audience on show night. So that was really pleasing. And then I had this weird situation. The agent that I had nothing to do with getting me the job. But the way it works in that business is they still receive your check, and they take their 10% out, and they turn around a check for the rest of it to you. Well, these particular agents were attempting to steal the $2,600. And I found out about it because about 2 days before the show aired, which was about a month after we shot it, I called them and I said, where's my paycheck for that? And they said, we haven't gotten it. So I called the Seinfeld offices, and they said, that check cleared the bank 2 weeks ago. So I went and fired the agent, took all my pictures back and stuff. And so the episode aired on Thursday night, and Friday, the casting director calls me at home, and he goes, where are you? What's going on? And I said, I'm here at home. And he goes, well, a lot of people are wanting to know who you are, and your agents are evidently saying you moved to New York. And I'm going, no, I'm here in L.A., I haven't moved. And he goes, well, you better get a new agent fast, because people kind of want to know who you are now. So I spent the next 2 days, my mom and I rushed like 300 cards that said, did you see Seinfeld? Did you like the Soup Nazi? Do you want to represent him? And I got mailing labels of all the agents in town, and at that time, stamps that you had to lick and stamp. And my mother and I sat there for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I took them all to the post office, and I'm standing there in line with this huge stack of these cards, and some guy goes, hey, do you watch Seinfeld? And I went, oh yeah, religiously. And he goes, you look just like the guy that played the Soup Nazi. And that was the first inkling that, wow, I was just a guest cast, but people remember. And then about a week or so later, we were at Costco getting our photographs, when you used to have to take 35 millimeter photographs and get them developed. And we got the envelope of photographs that we took the night that we shot the show. And a couple said the same thing to me, like, did anyone ever tell you look like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld? And I opened up the photo thing and I pull out a photo of me in costume with my mother and my sister. And I go, you mean this guy? And they went, oh, that's you? And I went, yeah. And so I started to get a little bit of an idea. And then little by little, I started to get offered weird things. Like there's a convention they do every year to sell syndicated television shows to local stations. They call it the NATV convention. And Sony and Columbia TriStar wanted to rebuild the soup kitchen for the Seinfeld booth, because they were still trying to sell Seinfeld into syndication. And they asked me to come and, be the soup Nazi and man the booth. And I got this like all expenses paid vacation in New Orleans with my wife and my son. And, it was really exciting. And so little by little, people started to like hire me to do things. And I just, each year, and maybe this is because I'm Jewish or not, but each year I say, when's the bottom going to fall out? When are people going to just completely forget about that character? But it never happens, And like I said, the Funko Pop thing this year is it just surprises me every year. So the answer is kind of like, I never am in that moment where I understand how popular that character is, because it doesn't end, and I keep waiting for it to come to an end. But I was, I don't know, it was a number of years ago, they did a top 100 Seinfeld characters, and I think I came in as like number 10. And a guy from the Rolling Stone wanted to do a phone interview with me. And he goes, well, a lot of actors like Barry Williams, from the Brady Bunch, they don't like to be called their character names, and they don't like the fact that they're associated with just like one character. He goes, but you seem to really be happy about the soup Nazi, and you embrace it, and you don't try to fight it at all. And he goes, could you say something about that? And I said, yeah, I could say something about that. I'm being interviewed by the Rolling Stone. I mean, do I have to say anything else? So who gets interviewed by the Rolling Stone? I'm not a like rock star. So it gets more crazy and pleasing every year for me. And I never inhale it, as Bill Clinton once said, because, I don't buy into it. Like I tell all my friends, if you ever hear me say to anybody, do you know who I am? Just take out a gun and shoot me, because that will be, the worst moment of my life. So I continually just feel like me, just a journeyman actor that got lucky with, as Anson Williams once said, a 32 million viewer audience. And, I'm happy that the performance worked out, I had been training so long, and not everything I did was that well accepted, but that one just seemed to gel. So I was really happy that I got that opportunity, and I'm happy every year that people, and lately the question I've been getting from a lot of friends is, when do you think they're going to cancel you? And I go, well, I get Medicare and Social Security soon, so, now it doesn't matter. But you know what I mean? But it's like, I did lose a commercial in 2019 because the CEO of a very large software company that I'm not allowed to say their name, they were going to do a commercial with me. And just so you could guess it yourself, they did it with Marty Cove as, the head of Cobra Kai instead. And they were going to do it with me as my character from Seinfeld. They weren't going to mention the name The Soup Nazi or anything like that. But the CEO of the software company, just at the very last minute, said, "You know what? I'm not comfortable with this." His character is associated with the word Nazi. And so the ad agency, or one of the biggest ad agencies in the business, they called me and they said, "Can you send us proof that you're Jewish?" So I sent them my bar mitzvah invitation, pictures from my bar mitzvah. I still have my, what they call the tallis, the prayer shawl. I don't know why I kept it, but I was asked by the Pittsburgh Jewish Gazette recently, "Why did you save it all these years?" And I said, "I don't know. It just seemed to be something very important, Comes in a velvet bag, and I just kept it." But I sent all that stuff, and they sent all that stuff to the CEO, and he didn't care. So they didn't do the commercial. But I think that's the first time in all 25 years that anybody has said anything or taken any kind of offense about the term Nazi being used. Because, when I got the phone call and they said the character was called the Soup Nazi, I didn't even flinch. I just said, "Oh, an overly strict food vendor, okay." That's the thought I had. I'd never had another thought about it. And that is why I played him, that way, because in the audition, I did it. I did all 6 scenes, and Jerry laughed harder than anyone I've ever heard laugh in any audition I've ever done, before or since. But they asked me to wait a while, and he asked me to come back in, and he goes, "It was really funny, man, but I'm just not sure why the character is so mean all the time." He goes, "Could you do it again and maybe make him nicer at some points, like a little of this?" And I'm thinking, I have no concept of how to do that. To me, the very nature of the nickname of the character means he's just ornery and angry and impatient and ready to yell, And so I tried to do it that way for him, and it was just crickets. He didn't laugh at all. So luckily, they ended up hiring me, and he came right up to me the first minute I hit the set, and he goes, "Forget about the direction I gave you, man. Just do what you did when you came in. For some reason, the meaner, the funnier." So, I never saw him any other way, I figured, why, you'd nickname a guy that nickname because he's just always, strict and, by the book. So, it's crazy to me. I still don't understand why No Soup for You is funny, to be honest with you. I swear, the night before the audition, there were no scenes on paper available. They used to be able to fax you. I'm really dating myself, but they used to fax you the audition scene. And they didn't have anything. They just told me the character's name, and they wanted me to prepare a Middle Eastern accent, which was really easy because my mom was always in love with Omar Sharif, and I had Lawrence of Arabia on VHS, so I just put it in, and there's a moment in there when they're in the desert where Omar Sharif says, "You're drifting, Lawrence. Stop drifting. Be warned." And I went, okay, there's the voice. And then a friend of mine who's a stand-up comedian who was helping me on my job search, I called him and I said, "You're not going to believe this," because that day I had auditioned to do one line on the Power Rangers. And he knew about it. I think he helped set that up because he was on that show Masked Rider. And I called him and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but tomorrow I have an audition for Seinfeld." And he asked me, "Well, what is it?" I said, "All I know is the character's name, the Soup Nazi. They want a Middle Eastern accent. I got that, but I don't know anything else." And he goes, "Well, ad-lib something for me right now." And I said, he'd probably really, hate the 4 Seinfeld characters, and they'd probably cause him trouble. So he'd probably say something to George like, "You, small fry, baldy, I don't like you. Get to the end of the line, or no soup." And my friend goes, "I like that no soup thing." And I went, "Why?" And he goes, "It's just funny." And I said, and he's a stand-up comedian and an actor, and I said, "Why is it funny?" And he goes, "Just sometimes 2 words up against each other are funny." And I went, "Okay." And he goes, "So, make sure you ad-lib that, if they have something, and if they don't, make sure you say that." And I went, and the first 3 scenes were there available to me. And in the very first scene, I noticed it said, "No soup for you." So I thought, well, that's a good coincidence, you know. That gave me hope. So I had it in mind, but Spike Feresten did write it. And to this day, I don't understand why "No Soup for You" is so funny. But ever since the finale episode, you know, the first 3 years between my episode and the finale, I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say it to anybody, you know, not even to my mom. I just said, no, it's going to come out of context, and it's going to be like those people that stand around the water cooler doing bad impressions of someone from Saturday Night Live, you know? So when I got the Emmy nomination, I got interviewed by Inside Edition and Entertainment Tonight and another, you know, entertainment show, and they all asked me to say it, and I turned them all down. I said, no, I really don't do that, because it was a moment in time, and it's going to come out bad, you know? And so I got called upon to be a part of the finale, and the very first thing we shot was the period where the jury's out, and they're showing you what all the Seinfeld characters are up to in that little New England town. And it's all done to music, so it's all silent. And so my little scene, we did it on the Warner Brothers lot, is I'm serving soup to Poppy, and, you know, some of the other characters are sitting around, and Poppy motions like salt and pepper, and I take the bowl away from him. And that's what it said to do in the script. And Jerry and Larry David used to have this very unnerving habit of standing together with their arms crossed, whispering to each other. And they were doing that at that moment, and I'm thinking, like, oh, they think I don't have it anymore, and they're going to call Shaloub, you know? And so they call me over, and Jerry goes, "We think you need to say it out loud." And I went, "It? Oh my God, really?" And he goes, "Yeah, you know, they're not going to hear it, but we want, you know, we don't want you to mouth it. We want you to say it." And I just went back across the street in abject terror, you know, that it's going to just come out horrible, you know. And so, you know, I took the soup away from Poppy, and for the first time in 3 years, I just went, "No soup for you." And I heard one of, like, cameramen or lighting guys, you know, giggling. And they just went, "Okay, check the gate. Okay, fine, moving on." And we started to walk down the street, and Larry David crossed the street and got alongside me, and he goes, "You know, man, you say it the exact same way you said it 3 years ago. It's like there's no difference in it at all." And so that was why now I bark at anybody that asks or doesn't ask. You know, my doctor hit me below the knee with the hammer one time in an exam, and I went, "No soup for you." And he cracked up, you know. So yeah, it was really what Larry David gave me permission to you know, be able to say it again. So yeah, so it's been a really long and winding, weird road, and every year I just go like, what is it about this character? And then also, what is it about Seinfeld? You know, when my first episode was the parking garage that I saw, and my ex-wife, who is an actress and a very good comedic actress, is from Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm from Brooklyn. And so we watched the episode, and it ends, and I went, wow, that is the most genius comedy I think I've ever seen. And she agreed, and I said, but unfortunately, I don't think many people are going to get it. And she goes, why do you say that? And I said, well, it's just like really urban and New York and minute and specific, and I just don't think, you know, people are going to understand that. And she goes, well, I'm from Indiana, and I got it. And I said, well, maybe the show has a chance. And so, yeah, it surprises me that that's the show that became multi-generational. Like, I understand Friends. I get that. But I don't understand why Seinfeld and all its quirks and weirdnesses has become this multi-generational show. And I'm doing cameos for kids that are turning 12 and 13. and I'm doing cameos for their great-grandfathers that are turning 89. So it's the most amazing phenomenon to me in the world. You know, I have an explanation for it. I think the show about nothing is really a moral tale about how what you do comes back to you. And I think in every episode they do something bad to somebody, and it always comes back to them in the end, especially George, you know. So I think it is more than a show about nothing. So that may be why, because a moral tale is, people never change, so a moral tale is always that. So anyway.
I've got another question right here for you.
Since your role as the Soup Nazi, I've noticed you in episodes of older TV shows, and I'm always surprised and excited. That's, one of those shows was Martial Law. I was wondering if you have any good memories from there or with Samo, or. I
do. First I got introduced to a guy who's become a lifelong friend because I needed a stuntman. I do have a background in karate. All through my teenage years, I took Shotokan karate, and I was in the second-degree green belt, so my next belt would have been brown. But it was just a time in my life where I was spending so much time doing that, and I wanted to just move on to other things. But they never asked me that, so they just hired a stuntman. And it's a guy named Max Daniels who happens to look almost, he could be my brother. And so they chose him to get beat up by Samo instead of me, But I could have been beat up by Samo. But, and then, the scene where I climbed the trellis with a big knife in my teeth, and then she pushes the trellis down. Well, they let Max ride it down to the ground, and then they just picked me up lying on the ground and doing that with it. But Max and I became, good friends, and then, oddly enough, I then did an episode of Drake and Josh, and Josh Peck had to fall off the roof and land on me. I was their father's boss. So again, they wanted to drop a dummy on a stuntman, and I said to the stunt coordinator, "You know Max Daniels?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know Max." And I said, "You should get him, because he looks like me." And then I did a really bad Comedy Central movie called Knee High Pi, where at the end I played this sheik that has to fall off of a thing onto the hood of a Mercedes and then sink into quicksand. And again, the stunt coordinator said, "Don't worry about it, we're going to get a stuntman." And I said, "Make sure you get Max Daniels." And so, unfortunately, that was just those three, but, Max thanked me for getting him to work, and I said, "That's an actor's dream, man. To get another actor work, it's hard enough to get work yourself. To be responsible for getting another actor a job is like a really cool feeling." And so, but we're friends to this day, and it was a good experience because I was, like I said, very much into karate. I mean, I think I saw Enter the Dragon every day for a month when it came out, my friends and I. So to get into a martial arts-based television show was a personal pleasure, to call all my old buddies that took karate with me and go, "I'm doing martial law," And so it was fun, and thanks for remembering it, And there's one scene, by the way, when I was watching the episode, there's one scene where, it's nighttime, and I'm stealthily crossing the yard, and I said to my wife, my then wife, I said, "I'm not that bow-legged, that's not me." And I go, "That's Max." So he not only did my stunts, but they probably didn't want to bring me all the way up the hill from the trailers, and he was already up there, so they probably said just run through the field, So yeah, that was a great experience. Thank you. I like that.
All right. Well, I think if you didn't have a chance to ask Larry a question, he's going to be going back to his table, and you can certainly talk to him there. And
I have one quick question.
Except for one quick question.
Did anybody else audition for the role of the Soup Nazi?
Yes. The pre-read, which is the first audition that you do usually for the casting assistant, there were about 2 or 3 guys, and they were all a lot younger than me. But the funny thing is I was going to go in blue jeans, a white T-shirt, and one of my wife's white aprons because she was waiting tables, as all actors do. And at the last minute, we were looking in the mirror, and I said, I got this crazy idea. And she goes, what? And I said, an army uniform. And she goes, try it. And so I had this old army shirt literally from the 70s, and I just don't throw stuff away, so I still had it. And I had a pair of green pants, and so I put that on, and I had the mustache, and I hadn't shaved in a few days, and I'm looking in the mirror, and she's going oh my God. And I said, what? She goes, wait. And she goes into her side of the closet, and she comes back with a beret, and she puts the beret on my head, and we're both just staring because I looked exactly like Saddam Hussein. And remember, this was 1995. So, I'm staring for a while, and I just look at her, and she goes, what? And I said, do I really have the guts to go in there like this? It could either kill it or, So, yeah, I went in an army uniform, and there were 3 other guys dressed like I was going to dress. And then when I went to the callback, there was just one guy there, but he knocked my socks off. It's an actor who's no longer with us. His name's Richard Libertini. But if you don't know his name, if you remember the movie called All of Me with Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin, he was the guru, the Indian guru, going around with the bowl going, Edwina baking bowl, put Edwina baking bowl. And then if you remember, 1979, I think, the original version of The In-Laws, he was the South American military general with the little face painted on it, Pepe. You kiss Pepe, you kiss the handsome man. So that was Richard Libertini. And so when I walked into the callback, I saw him. He was the only other guy there, and I just went I'm not getting this. Now, I have and I think it worked in my favor. I think nerves I might have had dissipated because I knew that I wasn't going to get it or have a chance. And then about 11 years later, the writer Spike Feresten told me that they had Tony Shalhoub in mind, but they never got around to offering it to him because after they thought they liked Richard Libertini the best, but then after I read, Jerry asked Spike, and Spike said, I like the angry New York guy. He's actually like the real guy, And the Spike wrote the episode about Al Yeganay, who the Letterman writers, of which Spike was one of, nicknamed the Soup Nazi. So it was just their private little personal thing. But evidently I captured him better than, Richard did. And Jerry and Larry David were a little worried from what I hear about a complete unknown in a part that big. But they deferred it to Spike, and they said, so you really like this guy the best, huh? And he goes, yeah, he's like the real guy. And that was the only way that I got it away from Libertini. But a few years later, I auditioned for another role, and he got it, so he got his revenge. But thanks.
Thank you for coming out. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you all
Larry Thomas,
for coming.
Soup Nazi, you know what to do.
Thanks.
He's going to be back at his table signing.
Hi, this is Aaron Ashmore, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe like now. Oh, and have fun and follow your fandom.